All right, let's dive into one of the most powerful forces in all of nature, the evolutionary battle of the sexes. It's this incredible, unspoken conflict that drives basically all of animal reproduction. Think of it like a drama, a high-stakes game of strategy and competition that's been playing out for millions and millions of years.
I mean, just think about it. Why are males and females often so incredibly different? We're talking everything from dazzling feathers and complex songs to who fights, who nurtures, and who gets to be picky. The differences can be just, well, staggering. But here's the thing. They aren't random at all. They're the direct result of this intense evolutionary negotiation, where each side is playing to win the only prize that really matters, passing on their genes to the next generation.
You know, in some corners of the animal kingdom, it really looks like a perfect partnership. Take these emperor penguins. They work together, sharing this immense burden of parental care, all just to make sure their one single chick survives the harsh Antarctic winter. It's a strategy of massive investment from both sides.
But then you look at a species like these long-tailed tits, and the strategy is completely different. It's all about numbers. It's a different kind of investment, one that's focused way more on quantity than on the long-term quality of each individual chick. So what on earth drives these two totally opposite approaches?
Well, this entire evolutionary drama, this whole story, it all starts at the most basic level imaginable. It begins with the very cells that create life and a single profound difference between them. And the technical term for it is anisogamy. Now, I know, it sounds a little complex, but the idea is actually super simple. It's just the biological fact that male and female sex cells, the gametes, are different sizes. That's it. And this one tiny difference, it changes absolutely everything.
Let's break it down. Think of it like this. On one side, you have eggs. They're huge, they're packed with nutrients, and they are incredibly expensive for the female to make. They are a high-investment, premium resource. And on the other side, you've got sperm. They're tiny, they're energetically cheap, and they're produced in just astronomical numbers. It's this simple economic imbalance that sets up a fundamental conflict of interest right from the get-go.
Okay, so this initial imbalance in investment, it basically writes the entire playbook for the mating game. It dictates all the strategies that we see playing out before mating even happens. So for a male, because his investment in each sperm is so incredibly low, his reproductive success isn't really limited by how much sperm he can make. It's limited by how many females he can get access to. This basic fact drives intense competition between males, which in turn favors the evolution of things like huge body size, weapons like antlers, or aggressive displays. Basically anything that gives a guy an edge in the fight for females.
But for females, the script is completely flipped. Since their eggs are so precious and so costly to produce, their success isn't about the number of mates they can have, it's all about the quality of their mate. This makes them the choosier sex. And what are they looking for? Well, they might choose a male who controls a fantastic territory with lots of food, or maybe one with the most dazzling ornaments, like a peacock's tail, which acts as a kind of honest advertisement for good genes, genes that'll give her kids the best shot at survival.
But here's where it gets really interesting. You'd think the conflict would end once a mate is chosen, right? Wrong. In many ways, that's when a whole new battle begins. It's an evolutionary arms race that moves from the outside world to inside the female's own body.
Yep, once mating has occurred, the competition moves inside. It all happens within the female's reproductive tract. This whole hidden world is called post-copulatory sexual selection, and it's where sperm from different males might have to compete to fertilize an egg, and where females can still have a say in who actually fathers their offspring.
Males have evolved this whole arsenal of offensive tactics for this stage. Sometimes it's straightforward, like just producing way more sperm than the other guy, or physically guarding a female to stop her from mating with anyone else. But it can also get, well, a lot more creative. Some insects have evolved bizarrely shaped genitals just to scoop out a rival's sperm. And then you have the extreme case of bedbugs, where the male literally stabs the female in the abdomen to inject his sperm directly, bypassing her defenses entirely. It's wild.
But females are not just passive bystanders in all this. They have their own counter-strategies, something scientists call cryptic or hidden female choice. For instance, a female might mate with multiple males, which creates confusion about who the father is. And this can actually be a life-saving tactic to prevent a new dominant male from killing offspring he thinks aren't his. And get this, some females can even selectively favor sperm from one male over another long after mating is over.
So that brings us to the final stage of this whole evolutionary negotiation. The mate's been chosen, fertilization has happened. Now for the big question: who raises the kids? And this is often the most intense standoff of all.
It really becomes a strategic cost-benefit analysis for each parent. They're facing this classic evolutionary trade-off. Do I stay and pour my energy into making sure these specific offspring survive? Or do I leave, desert the family, and try to find another mate to maximize the total number of kids I have in my lifetime?
And the trade-off is pretty stark. The benefit of staying is obvious, right? Your kids are way more likely to survive and thrive. But the costs are huge. You lose out on other mating opportunities, you spend a ton of energy, and you might even put yourself at a higher risk of being eaten. On the flip side, deserting frees you up to reproduce again, but it comes at the massive risk of losing the offspring you just worked so hard to create.
So how does this standoff usually get resolved? Well, at least in mammals, it's pretty one-sided. Since fertilization and pregnancy happen inside the female, she's already made a much larger initial investment by the time the baby's born. This often leads to the male deserting. In fact, in over 90% of all mammal species, males provide no parental care at all. For them, the evolutionary math just favors finding new mates.
But, and this is a big but, evolution isn't dogma. These aren't unbreakable laws. Nature is absolutely full of fascinating exceptions that prove the rule, cases where these typical sex roles are flipped completely on their head. For example, we usually think of males as the ones competing, but that's not always true. In some species of antelope, after the males have done their displays, it's actually the females who get into aggressive fights with each other for access to the most desirable male.
And then you have one of the most famous role reversals out there. In pipefish and seahorses, it's the male who gets pregnant. He carries the young in a special pouch. And because he's now the one making the larger parental investment, he also becomes the choosier sex, and you see females competing for access to him.
And if you thought that was wild, let's talk about the spotted hyena. Their entire society is a matriarchy run by dominant females. These females are bigger, they're more aggressive, and they have an enlarged clitoris that looks and functions like a penis. They mate and give birth through it. And this unique anatomy makes it physically impossible for males to force copulation, giving females complete and total reproductive control.
So, from the microscopic size of a single-sex cell all the way up to the complex decision of who takes care of the young, this fundamental conflict has sculpted the incredible diversity of life we see on Earth. Understanding this ancient evolutionary playbook, it doesn't just explain why a peacock has a flashy tail. It gives us a powerful new lens for understanding the behavior of every single sexually reproducing organism on the planet, including, maybe, ourselves.